Hey everybody, this is Dan from Pain Free You. I wanted to introduce Angie from Missouri. She has graciously volunteered to share her success story in the mind body community with us. And Angie, welcome. Pleasure to meet you. We haven't really spoken before this, so I really appreciate you wanting to share your success with my audience. So thank you. And why don't you say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little story.
Hello, and thank you so much, Dan, for having me. You have been such an inspiration to me. I discovered your account several months ago, and your videos have just been. I listen to them in the shower. I listen to them when I'm doing dishes. Like you're in my ear, and it's the things that I kind of I had learned this previously on my healing journey, and we can get into that. But you're the one I go back to because your content is so refreshing, it's so reassuring. It's like, yes, I'm on the right track. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is right. This works. All of that. And that's what I love about you is you just keep saying it doesn't matter. Like the reel you did about when you pulled the muscle when you were sprinting up the hill. It doesn't matter if I pulled a muscle, if it's PDP, doesn't matter. It's treated the same way. If the body's either going to heal, you know.
Or I
So
don't fuel the, perceived danger.
that's right. Yep. Yeah. So thank you so much for your content. Thank you for having me. And my story really, I mean, all of us, I think our stories begin when we're very, very young with some, wounds that happen in young childhood. But when I first knew something was wrong was probably in my early teens. I started having severe abdominal pain, couldn't eat much. And at the time, instead of receiving the support that I needed so that I could have healed, my family was very dismissive, very much, oh, you're just anorexic, which I wasn't. I love food. I loved food then. I love food now. It was just the pain. I told my mom it feels like I got kicked in the stomach. It was a physical sensation. And but there was no physical cause for the pain. There wasn't anything wrong inside my body. It was coming from my body trying to talk to me and me not really knowing how to understand and listen. And
Right.
so over time, the messages got louder and louder, and symptoms started to get worse and worse. And I started to develop symptoms in other areas of my body. And then fast forward to I got married, I had a couple of children, and then my third child, right after her birth, my health just completely plummeted. And it was then that I was diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome,
Okay.
POTS, a couple of serious compression disorders, MALS, median arcuate ligament syndrome, as well as nutcracker syndrome and SMAS. And over the years, those ended up needing surgery to correct.
And I
But
haven't even heard of some of those acronyms. So they're not
yeah, okay.
common as some are.
Yeah. Yeah, those are generally they're considered rare. One of my specific vascular surgeons said they're like other things. They're there, but they're more rarely diagnosed, and they're kind of misdiagnosed as other
Mhm.
things.
Right.
Um, in my case, hindsight is 2020. I don't really know for sure how things would have turned out, but I wish that I had known this stuff before my surgeries and tried at least to see if my body could heal those. Because by the time I reached the point where I needed surgery, it was a physical compression where my aorta and my superior mesenteric artery were completely smashing the renal vein, and it was 100% occluded. There was no blood flow going through at all.
Yeah.
So
A
that
mind
is
body approach is not going to move anatomy.
exactly. Yeah,
I
it's
don't think.
certainly a structural issue.
Hmm.
But what I had learned is that EDS, being a connective tissue disorder, it results in very tissues that don't have a lot of structural integrity. They're weak, they're floppy. And so if I had been able to correct the path that I was going down before these got to this point, it's possible that my body could have healed. So
I'll never say never. Um,
yeah.
I know there's various flavors of EDS. What was
Hmm.
you said another word before you said Ehlers-Danlos?
My type was hypermobile type, which is the most common type. It's also the type for which there is no known genetic cause. And so this is why I've 100% healed from it. And this is why many people are healing from it, because we're told it's genetic, because the symptoms mimic the other types of EDS that are genetic. And yet they just did a massive study a couple years ago, and they did not find a genetic factor, a genetic cause for that. So what
What were some of the symptoms that were labeled EDS for you?
primarily joint hypermobility, instability, joints that just moved around, subluxing joints, severe chronic pain in both my joints and my muscles, fragile skin, poor gut function.
Okay.
And then because everything kind of gets stretchy, the blood vessels also get stretchy. And so then I was also diagnosed with POTS, because basically they described it to me as, it's like your blood vessels are worn out pantyhose. They don't have a lot of
Elasticity.
exactly. And so that's why your blood pressure's low and your heart rate's high. And so at the time I received those diagnoses, I thought, well, and I was told, like many of us, this is it. This is the best it's going to get. It's only going to go downhill from here. You're going to be in a wheelchair. You're going to be on IV fluids for the rest of your life, et cetera, et cetera. And so I believed that. At the time, I felt relieved. I was happy to have a diagnosis, because I wanted to know what was going on in my body. I didn't want to feel crazy. I felt validated. And so for a while, my approach was just managing my conditions, pain management, mobility aids, things like the IV fluids. I had a port for IV fluids, tried multiple different medications. Like that's a pretty aggressive treatment. And so they tried, of course, all the medications they could. Nothing made any difference. I would have a blood pressures of, 70/40, heart rates of up to 200. And you can't function like that. And then, of course, chronic pain. I had a total hip replacement when I was 26. So very,
Can I ask
very,
a question about the hip?
yeah.
Was the determination to do surgery due to the pain in the hip, or was it functionally not, like socket ball, not functionally supporting your body?
It was pain.
Okay.
And then because I could bend it, but near the end, right before the surgery, there was a lot of restriction and catching. And when they did a scope, they saw that the labrum was torn. It had pulled away from the socket, and it had kind of wadded up inside my hip joint. And then over time, I had chondromalacia over the whole head of the femur. They tried a chondroplasty first. It did not work. And so basically they described it to me as all the cartilage is gone. It's not going to grow back. So the only thing we can do is replace the hip.
Curious, and this is exploratory for me and learning for me. With that hip, how long was the pain there before you started to notice these, or told about these structural problems with the labrum and everything else? I have a theory that when we are in pain, it's not a theory, it's known. When we're in pain, the brain creates tension to protect the joint so you don't move it too much. I walked like a robot for a long time because I thought and my brain perceived I had a bad back, so tense it to keep it safe from moving too much. And I am curious as to your opinion, having lived through it, how much of the damage was as a result of the pain and the resulting likely tension and protection going on. But as you continued to try to move it, possibly PT and different things, do you think that some of the damage was as a result of things just
Body
being so
mechanics.
tight and continuing to try to work through that with stretching, PT, and what have you? Did you do all that stuff for the pain?
Yeah. And, when you're correcting and adjusting and protecting, you throw off your body mechanics. And so
Yeah.
you're going to have things wearing incorrectly. No, the pain started. I can tell you exactly when it started. It started when I was probably, let's see, I know exactly the house we lived in. It was between 17 and 18 years of age.
Okay.
And my hip replacement was 26. So many, many, many years I had pain in my hip. And again, I can tell you exactly how it started. So like with a lot of these chronic things, it started with an actual injury. So I was riding my horse and I did an emergency dismount. I landed on the leg and I felt a sharp pain in my hip at the time. So I did something, don't know what it was. My parents did not take me to the doctor. So not having anyone tell me, you're fine, it's no big deal. My 18-year-old mind is going, I injured something. It's very painful. I remember my little brother sitting on my lap, and when he got up, I could barely walk. It was so painful.
Yeah.
And here I'm 18 years old. And so year after year goes by, and it becomes more and more and more painful. Every time I would stand up, everything, I would be guarded. I would always, hold on to the arms of chairs when I would get up and down. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of that going on. Yeah, you're spot on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just curious. Now, I just want to caution people watching that I don't want you to believe that TMS is damaging to the body, because we just went through a scenario where perhaps the tension and then trying to work through the tension, the brain was creating the tension, but if you're trying to stretch and adjust and whatever you do with the body, it's possible that the treatments to try to overcome the tension, which is fixing the symptom, not the cause, right? Because whatever happened when you had to emergency dismount the horse likely healed.
Mhm.
The body heals.
That's right.
It is likely the fear and the attention and the unknowing and the doubt that really created the persistence of that pain. And the worse it got, the worse it got, because the fear kept growing, the attention, the eventually you must have gone to a doctor and they didn't know what was going on. They probably did one of those.
Yeah.
All right. So just theories. I like exploring this stuff because I always learn from talking to people. So thank you for indulging me with that.
Oh yeah, I love it too. And I love connecting the dots. And the more people I talk to, the more I go back and remember, oh yeah, this is how it progressed. And so it helps me too. So I appreciate those questions.
Mhm.
And then one of the things that I'm sure contributed as well was the fact that I did not have any support. I didn't have anyone there comforting me, saying, it's okay, here, let's put some ice on it, let's put some heat on it, let's rest, rest for a week, let your body heal. Your body's going to heal. You're great. Like I now do with my kids. Now I do this with my kids because I know better now. And so, I don't go, oh no, you're fine. No, I validate their injury. I help their body heal
Mhm.
and tell them your body's going to heal. You're going to do great. And so there wasn't any of that. So I was left on my own to catastrophize, to try to imagine with my mind what's going on in there when I can't see it. I have no tests. I have no doctor to tell me what's going on. So, yeah, there was certainly a lot of that as well. A lot of just the fear because I was not supported. There was no compassion shown to me.
Well,
Yeah.
that is an injury in and of itself, is not getting any type of compassion for a legitimate pain syndrome.
Yeah.
And you said that started from your, stomach pains early
Right.
on, and that wasn't acknowledged or didn't receive any compassion. So you were definitely on your own. That leaves a psychological injury as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then the connection. So after I was diagnosed with EDS and POTS, and then the diagnoses just kept coming, I ended up with another cardiac condition called inappropriate sinus tachycardia, or IST, which is an electrical problem in the heart. POTS is more of mine was hypovolemic POTS, so it was low blood volume, stretchy blood vessels. And then the IST was my heart was just for no reason. They're like, it just means your heart beats too fast for no reason. So I would be laying in bed completely flat. My heart would be going 130, 150 beats per minute, just laying there. It was exhausting. And so I had that. And then, I wore multiple heart monitors and had IV fluids. And I ended up on home health because I ended up on a feeding tube, could not eat anything. The abdominal pain just continued to get worse and worse and worse. Even after my surgeries, it just continued to get worse. I had little breaks here and there, and then it would just always come back. I did multiple rounds of IV iron infusions because my iron was always super low. And then I developed hypokalemic periodic paralysis, which is, you'll read, extremely rare and supposedly genetic. And I had all the symptoms. I was diagnosed by a neuromuscular specialist at a teaching hospital who specializes in this. I saw a doctor regularly at a muscular dystrophy clinic. I had muscle advanced EMG, basically muscle testing, to diagnose that I indeed had a muscle ion channelopathy disorder. So none of this, I'm just going, oh, well, self-diagnosing this. No, this was all very well documented.
Right.
I don't have that anymore. It's completely gone. I have defied everything I've ever been told by my doctors was genetic, incurable. You'll have this for the rest of your life. You'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. Not true. Not true. I know. So in my case, I now know, having read this amazing book, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, The Secret Language of the Body by Carden Rabin and Jen Mann. They talk about the different symptoms, the different sensations, we'll just say symptoms, that our body shows us to indicate what nervous system state we're in. Are we in sympathetic flight? Are we in dorsal vagal shutdown? And in my case, I was reading through this book, now months and months after all my symptoms have gone away. I'm reading this book and I go, oh my goodness, every single symptom of dorsal vagal shutdown is basically the symptoms of periodic paralysis. It is where your body is pushing the gas and the brake at the same time. I would be completely paralyzed, couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't open my eyes, had to be carried to the bathroom. I've had to have my pants pulled down and literally flaccid paralysis put on the toilet. Extremely humiliating, very embarrassing. And that was all a symptom of my nervous system just going, nope, I'm done. This is it. Dorsal vagal shutdown. And I had no idea.
Wow. That's some wild stuff.
Yeah. And I know someone personally who also was diagnosed with it, who saw my story, started doing the nervous system healing and working with these types of methods. And she also recovered. And she's now hiking miles and miles and going grocery shopping by herself. And so I'm not the only one.
Yeah. So tell me what the name of this, what was it called? A temporary paralysis?
It's called hypokalemic or low potassium, and there are different types, but it's called periodic paralysis. There's hypokalemic, hyperkalemic, and usually because when you have your blood drawn during an attack, your potassium is either really high or really low, and in my case, it was always really low. And so I was on a daily potassium supplement to keep my potassium up so that I wouldn't have these episodes, and that helped a lot generally, but I would still go into them occasionally. And now for probably at least 8-9 months, maybe longer now, I haven't been on the potassium and I haven't had a single episode.
I love that.
Yeah. I'm on no medications. I was on at least a dozen. I ended up on palliative care. And at the very end of my illness, right before I discovered all of this, I was on palliative care, tube fed through TPN through my port because my body rejected all the tube feeds. And my body also was rejecting the TPN. I was completely bedbound, and I had already talked to my palliative care team about switching to hospice, stopping the TPN, and just going home. And I had written, I still have them, written goodbye letters to my kids. That's how close I was.
From the brink of death. Holy shit.
Yep.
Excuse my language.
Yep. Yeah, my husband was ready to bury his wife, and it was
wow.
it was not the Lord's will. He wanted me here a little longer.
Wow. Absolutely incredible. So everybody's going to be saying, Angie, how did you do this? How did you go from that brink of disaster, really, with it looking like everything was mapped out that way, to turning the corner, both from a mindset perspective as well as a knowledge, behavior, thinking, like what turned the corner? You said you heard about the mind-body stuff. What was your introduction to that? And how did you kind of get into that? And what did you start to do that started to say, that's possible. So can you walk me through that? Because I'm sure the audience is going to be like, don't leave us hanging. Don't just stop there. I'm all better. Look, 12 meds to none. I'm all better. Look at me. They're going to
Yeah,
want to know
absolutely.
the how, the what, the, what kept you moving forward. I just did a video today on finding your inner strength,
Mhm.
and you must have had a ton of that in order to get through. Now, you did mention the Lord, and I'm sure that was part of it, but there was also some accurate knowledge, um, decisions, behaviors, changing the way of thinking. So, can you kind of give me a little insight as to that side of your world?
Yeah. So I'll just say, first of all, that the mind body stuff was an accident. I did not set out researching this stuff, looking into this stuff. No one told me about it. I would say my only experience with it prior to getting started in it was a negative, when people had posted online, oh, I had such and I healed by changing my mindset. I'd be like, sure you did. You didn't have it as bad as me, right? We're always, I'm special, I'm different, I can't heal.
And you
Um,
can actually state that and probably be accurate due to the severity of your symptoms and the
right.
getting to that level where hospice
Yeah.
was, you know, a
Yeah,
serious
I felt
condition.
very validated. Yeah, I felt if anybody can not heal or have an excuse to not heal, it's me.
Well, I
But
say, a lot of people say I'm a special kind of broken. And
no, that's
to
so
them,
sad.
I say a lot of us feel that way. But in your
Mhm.
case, on paper, you actually were a special kind of broken. And to me, this is a brilliant story to tell because even though you had a lot of things going on that were measurable,
Mhm.
detectable,
Mhm.
diagnosable, you got better anyway, which just shows the power and the strength of teaching your brain
Mhm.
to settle
Yeah,
down. Because a brain
yeah.
that's terrified ends up in a whole host of trouble
Oh,
physically.
every system of the body, every system, and I'm
And
going to get into that.
even your
So,
lab tests. We had a guy, a long COVID success story, who in the middle of all of his symptoms, his liver enzymes were scary out of whack. And without doing anything for the liver, but just through this mind body process, not only did he get rid of his 20 plus symptoms, but his liver enzymes balanced and returned
mhm. Mhm.
without treatment. So I just wanted to share that because this is not a fluke.
Yeah,
This is kind of the power of the brain.
yeah,
And when the brain feels safer, things return to balance
yeah,
and you can return to health. So I'll stop
yeah.
talking and I'll let you speak.
No, you're exactly right. And just to bring in even more corroboration, there are people with Lyme disease that could say, "Oh, well, I have this Lyme disease, and so therefore I can't heal," or "I have MCAS, which is another diagnosis I had. I can't heal." And the brain, and my coach, the
MCAS,
nerve.
mast cell activation, right?
Yes, I'm
That's
sorry.
what,
Yes, mast
for
cell
the
activation.
audience. I knew what it
Yep.
meant, but I just want to make sure. Yeah, mast cell
Yes,
activation syndrome, which is an
yes.
extreme reaction to everything.
Yes. And in my case, it was every bite of food that I ate. I mean, even water, even my supplements, my medications. But my coach, my nervous system coach, she was amazing, and she would say to me, "It doesn't matter if you have SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, if you have all this, candida, if you have Lyme, if you have mold, all of these things, like you said, the body heals. And it's not just physical injuries that the body heals from. The body, and I was a registered nurse, it's been many, many years, but the body, even in nursing school, I learned the body is always trying to reach homeostasis. It will steal calcium from your bones to try to get calcium in your blood to maintain homeostasis. So
Mhm.
it will heal you if it's not in this terrified state of fight, flight, or dorsal vagal shutdown. It will heal you.
I
And
love
that includes your gut, it includes your blood, it includes everything, your nerves, everything. Um, and so how I came to it was I was at the end of my rope. I really didn't want to try anything else. And actually, I didn't want to try anything else. I made a post on Facebook saying, I'm going to stop the TPN. I've decided to go on hospice. It was on my birthday that I was in my palliative care office talking to them in my wheelchair, barely able to sit up, tubes coming out everywhere. telling them I'm ready to go on hospice. And we all sat there and cried together. And after that, I made that post. And one of my surgeons reached out to me, the one who had done the surgery for my median arcuate ligament syndrome. Sweet guy, amazing guy. He wrote me, or he had one of his staff members write me, and she said, Dr. Martinez says you cannot give up. You have to get here somehow. Just get here, and he's going to examine you. Amazing guy. So it was not at all what I wanted to do, but I packed up my daughter and we flew to Kansas City where he was. Incredibly difficult trip. I mean, I have bags of TPN with me. I have my wheelchair on the plane. It was very difficult to get there. But like you said, that inner strength, I have kids. I have to fight for them. It wasn't even for me. It was for them.
Yeah.
And so I got there, I saw him. He did a full examination, CTs, physical examination, ultrasound, everything he could possibly do. And this guy's brilliant. He couldn't find anything. And of course, I was crushed. I'm just like, find something so you can fix me. Nothing. And so I sat in his office and I bawled my eyes out. And then he said, tell me about those iron infusions you had. Because I had mentioned that the pain got worse or really got exacerbated after these iron infusions, which of course, that has nothing to do with a structural issue. And so I told him kind of the timeline of getting these iron infusions, the pain getting much, much worse. And he basically says you need to look into MCAS. Now, mast cell activation syndrome. So up to this point, I had not been diagnosed with that. I always assumed, well, because I don't have anaphylaxis, I can't have MCAS. Right. Well, I was wrong. And Dr. Afrin wrote an amazing book called Never Bet Against Occam, OCCAM. And it's all about MCAS and how it manifests as these multitude of very complex, weird symptoms. And at the root of it is actually hyperactive mast cells causing these symptoms. Wow. And so I thought, okay, well, I really don't want to do this, but fine, I'll do it for you. So I went home and I started researching MCAS. And I found, of course, being someone who always wants to try to take the holistic approach first, I started looking at some websites of people who treated MCAS naturally. And of course, I'm thinking diet, lifestyle changes, things like that. That's where my mind was going, just treating the symptoms, right? Yeah. And so I found my practitioner, Luann Hopkinson, and I had a discovery call with her. And I asked her, and I was laying in bed. I couldn't even sit up and talk to her. So I'm laying in bed and I said, how many people have done your program and have not gotten any better? Like, I need some hope. And she said, everyone who has done the work, who has done the program, has gotten better. Everyone. And I just like, that was enough for me. So I said, okay, I'll try it. I bought the program that night, got started with her. Of course, all the while just thinking this is going to be a diet, this is going to be supplements, gut testing, all that kind of stuff. Had no idea this was going to change my life on every level, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, everything. So it was a little bit after I joined the program that as I was looking through more of the materials, I was like, man, this has a lot to do with the brain and the nervous system. I didn't realize I had a brain problem, but I guess I do. So I just had an open mind. And this is huge too, is have an open mind. I don't know if it's because I was already at the end of my rope and I had no other options. I had no pride at that point of, I don't care what's wrong with me. If you tell me I'm crazy, like, it doesn't matter. At this point, I'll try anything. So have an open mind. Yeah, maybe it is in your head. The symptoms are real, but the problem is in your head, in your brain, in your nervous system. And so I got into the program, did everything, printed out all the documents, filled out all the papers, that it's all introspection questions. It's, what do you believe about this? Why do you want to heal? What are your thoughts about your illness? All of those sorts of things. How often do you talk about your illness? What kind of words do you use when you talk about your symptoms? On and on and on. And very, very eye-opening, very convicting as to, yeah, I absolutely did have a victim mindset. I absolutely was fixating on my symptoms. I was catastrophizing. I was living in all these ways that before I would have said, no, I'm not anxious. I just have really bad symptoms, So that was really how I got started down that path. And then, of course, the results came with doing the work. And then after I've graduated from her program, that wasn't enough for me. I was not happy just having symptom relief. I wanted to fully learn how to speak the secret language of my body. I wanted to be able to teach other people because my results were so incredible. Like you do this because of what you've experienced.
Sure.
And my family and my precious children who have gone through so much believing their mommy is going to die. I wanted to be able to teach them. I wanted to be able to help them process that trauma and help them when they have their own physical issues. And so I found your channel. I started devouring your videos and multiple other people, Cardin and Jen, so many other accounts that I've found that have been such a blessing. And that kind of, I think, brings us up to where we are today.
That's incredible. Can I ask about how long it was from Luann's program till you started seeing some changes and till you kind of felt like, holy crap, I'm okay, and you called it graduated from her program? What was the
Mhm.
time span of that? And
Yeah.
yeah,
That is, that's a difficult question just because everyone's journey is different. And my journey was so fast that I am hesitant to tell people because I don't want to create these unrealistic expectations. But I started seeing dramatic symptom results, symptom improvement within the first 2 weeks. And then in about 6 weeks, I had thrown away several of my medications and I was back to adding in regular foods slowly. And then 6 months after starting the program, I was fully healed. I was already, kind of trying to pass on this knowledge to other people. And now today it's been a year and 2 months since the
wow,
day that I determined to try this. And I think for me, a lot of it is, one, I had no other options. So I threw everything, and I'm an all or nothing person. Like I threw everything at this. This was not something I was doing casually on the side in hopes that it might help. This was my only hope. And so
wow,
I poured everything into it.
yeah,
I believed, and I had to make the choice that I would believe that it would work. And it comes back to the
matter.
mindset.
That
Yeah, comes
matters
back
so
to the
much.
mindset.
If you don't
Yeah.
believe it, your brain's not going to buy all of this work and these messages, and it's just going to stay completely terrified. And
Mhm.
no,
Yeah.
and people will say, "Well, how do I believe?" My opinion is belief is based on a decision we make,
Yeah.
and in order to make that decision, we evaluate the available information. Okay, so Luann, how many people? I think you've phrased it, how many people don't get better? And she was like, nobody. Everybody
Yeah.
gets better. And so you now had hope, you had a path, you had a success record that she was sharing, and you had to make a decision to believe that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Once you made that decision, your brain started to go to work for you to confirm that that decision and those beliefs were accurate. I talk about the reticular activating system. Our brain will look to confirm that our beliefs are true.
Mhm.
And you started to believe I can get better. And your brain started to look for evidence. Is that true? Is that true? And sometimes the only evidence of that initially is our mindset.
Mhm.
She's more
Yeah.
hopeful. She's not as depressed. She's not victimizing. She's not catastrophizing. She's not wallowing in symptoms. She's looking forward as opposed to, you know, behind or at your present state. And
Mhm.
that was the evidence your brain found that, yeah, this could work. And then 2 weeks, symptoms started to shift for you.
Yeah.
So that was brilliant.
Yeah. And I remember standing in my bedroom doing some of the practices and saying the affirmations because I would do them in response to the symptoms. So as soon as I would, well, in the beginning, the symptoms were constant. So I was doing it constantly. So I would feel the symptom. I would want to go to that place of, oh, this sucks. This is terrible. I can't. And the talk was so horrible, Dan. It was so horrible. I would say things like, I can't do this. Like all day long, I remember going, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't. All day long, I would just say, I can't do this. And I had to change that.
Your brain believes you when you say
Exactly.
that. And I have
Yes.
group coaching members that they'll get in a conversation with me, a 10-minute conversation. I'm saying, do you realize you said the word can't like 12 times?
Mhm.
That has to change if you want to get out of this.
And
So
that's what I did is I
continue.
determined I would put my hand on the area of the symptom and I would say the affirmations. I would say, I am resilient. I am on track. I am healing. In the beginning, I couldn't even say the words, I am healing. I could only say, I am on track. In other words, I'm going the right way.
You couldn't
I'm
even,
taking the
because
next step.
it didn't feel authentic.
No, it
For
didn't.
you to say,
But
I am healing, you're saying bullshit. No, you're not.
that's right.
And you kept going anyway. So
I kept saying,
how did you find the strength to just keep going? Was it just based on the decision you made that I'm not going to quit, so I have to do this? I have no other options? Like,
it was that, but also I think I believed, and I'm a Christian. I trust that the Lord has a plan for me, and there was a reason why he didn't let me give up and he didn't let me go. And so I thought, you know what? This is what he's shown me. I'm going to believe that it's going to work for me. And over time, it wasn't that long. And I remember having the conversation with myself in my mind. I can't say those words. That feels stupid. That's dumb. No, you can say them and you will say them. So say them because you were told to say them and you know it's going to work. So say them. And then I would say them. And I would have that back and forth in my own brain. And I would override that negative brain. And I would say, nope, I am healing. I am on track. And after the first time you say those words that they feel like sandpaper on your tongue, it
mhm.
gets easier. And the next time it's easier. And the third time it's easier. And then you start to believe it and it starts to be natural. And that's how it worked.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you said that because I literally just in the past week or 10 days did a video called Messages of Safety Will Not Be Believed at First.
You
That's the title of the video.
just have to
The
do it anyway.
dialogue was exactly what you just described. And it came from a conversation with somebody in my group coaching who said, Dan, I didn't believe this stuff at first, but it's getting easier because I'm sticking with it. And so what you just said is really, really key because you have to put your belief above the fear brain. The fear brain goes, no, it's not going to work. Don't you remember we got all these problems.
Yeah.
And so your conviction to stick with it is why you got better. You did the work. And so, Luann Hopkinson, is there a type of practitioner that she was? Was she like a limbic system person? Was she, what was her, how would she describe herself as a coach, practitioner, therapist? Like, what does she call
Yeah.
herself?
Yeah, I will answer that in 1 second after I respond to what you just said.
Okay.
So about, not believing it, but doing it anyway. One of the thoughts I had that kept me going that was very important was, what's the harm? What's it going to hurt?
No downside.
If I say these words, even if they feel inauthentic, if I say these words, what's it going to hurt? Just my pride, just me letting go of that victim mindset. That's all. I can do that. I have nothing to lose. I'm dying anyway. So just say the words.
Yeah.
And so I did. Yeah,
Yeah. Nothing to lose. I always say there's no downside, only
that's
benefit.
right. That's
There's
right.
no downside. Just do it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, Luann she has multiple certifications. She does a lot of work with the gut and nutrition, but she would admit this is secondary to the brain and the nervous system work. And so she coaches a lot of elements of DNRS, which is a neural rewiring, like
Yeah, I
brain
know.
retraining system. She incorporates a lot of polyvagal theory. She incorporates a lot of somatics like Qigong and let's see, just a lot of brain based retraining and the body based conveying safety to your body, conveying safety to your nervous system through your body.
Yeah.
A lot of affirmations. She does MAP, which is a type of therapy similar to it's a type of brain kind of reorganization therapy,
I think I've
similar to
heard of it, but I haven't dug into it.
yeah, I'm not super knowledgeable on it. I just know it works. And it's similar to EMDR, just without the eye movements, but it works on kind of reorganizing memories and the associated emotions. And you listen, it's just an audio, and you listen to it and you just are very relaxed. You don't really have to contribute or think. You just listen. And it acts on like the librarian part of your brain, where it will go through and it will separate the memory from the associated traumatic emotion. So you still have the memory, but you can now think about it without having all the trauma and the
Yeah,
symptoms and the emotions that come with that.
yeah,
So she does
separate.
work a lot more on the deeper level. Like she just takes it all the way down to what happened in your past and what's built into your nervous system. Why are you in this state of hypervigilance and scanning for threats? And let's address that.
Yeah. So one of the things I learned, I have an NLP certification, and
Mhm.
one of the things we used to do is kind of look back at old experiences and different than MAP, I'm sure, but look at the traumatic experience and then get the lesson from that experience so that you can get the lesson. The lesson is what will keep you safe moving forward. You don't need to carry the emotional charge anymore.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, a child who was in an abusive home, the lesson is had nothing to do with me. They were broken, damaged, insane, whatever, but it had nothing to do with me. I don't need to get upset every time I think about it because it wasn't my fault,
Mhm.
right? Another example of getting the lesson, kid runs into the street chasing a ball, almost gets hit by a truck. He doesn't need to be terrified of trucks for the rest of
Mhm.
his life. The lesson is don't play in traffic. Don't chase a ball without looking both ways. The lesson will keep him safe. So you can let
Mhm.
go of the emotional charge of almost getting hit by a truck. And so it sounds like that reorganizing allows you to not be triggered with the emotional event because you've kind of reorganized the event itself. Is that similar? Anything to add to that or?
Yeah, I think that's similar, and there's there's a lot more involved in it that I'm not even it's over my
It's
head.
okay.
It's pretty
Fine. I
complicated.
was just curious.
But yeah, she does incorporate NLP into her program as well. I think that's one of
Cool.
the things that she has in there. And it's pretty comprehensive.
Neat. Well, what else would you like to share? Because it sounds like you went through a hell of a journey. You had symptoms from when you were a kid, really kind of picked up from 16 till how old were you when you started with Luann?
This was just a little over a year ago, so I was 40 years old.
Okay, so you're 40, 41 now.
Mhm.
You've had a lot of years of dealing with this stuff.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty much all I can remember. And even before my diagnoses, it was just I felt so confused. I felt like my body was my enemy. I felt like I was just ahead. I completely disconnected from my body. And yeah, just very much had a negative relationship with my body
Yeah.
my whole life. But
So
yeah, go ahead.
what I'm looking for in this question is how would you advise somebody who is convinced I can't do this? In other words, I have coaching clients who are constantly looking at the clock saying, I've been doing this work for X amount of years. I've had symptoms for this long. It's not working yet. It hasn't worked. It must be me. I'm doing something wrong. And like, there's a lot of despair. And some of that comes from their lack of belief in themselves, in their ability to do the work, or uh, just a belief that, well, since it hasn't worked yet, it's not going to. And you probably had to, bang heads against some of those beliefs, at least in the beginning. I think what was to your advantage, but obviously a horrible place to start, was how desperate things were. And you just made a decision right up front, like throwing caution to the wind. I'm going all in. So for somebody who's kind of like convinced themselves that I'm not getting anywhere. And I've been at it for this long. Do you have any words of advice or encouragement? I guess one of them that I would suggest is look at what I was able to accomplish. Certainly you can do this. If I can, you can. But I'd like to hear from you if you had somebody in despair going, it's not working. I can't do this. What would you say? How would you smack them upside the head?
Yeah. Well, first of all,
Lovingly,
I
lovingly.
do, yeah, I do get messages where, very frequently where people will say, did you have this diagnosis? Did you have this diagnosis? But, and when I say, oh, yep, I had that and that, then they'll go, but did you have this? As if that
They're,
one
they're not,
diagnosis is going to be the thing that gives them the out as to why they can't heal or why
they
they're
want
not
to
healing.
they want to one up you.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you think you were sick. Well, I'm even more sick. And
Right. Right.
why are you arguing for your limitations?
Yeah. And that mindset, though, it betrays what's going on in their head. It's that they themselves are looking for an excuse to not do the work because they know it's going to be hard. And they don't have the belief that whatever diagnosis you have, unless it's something that's absolutely structural and there and has to be corrected, but even after that point, your body will still heal. But it's just this desire to find the reason why they can stay where they're at. And we know that already, though, just that the brain will always choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. And so it's the negativity bias. They're trying to find all these reasons why I can stay in my comfort zone and keep taking my medications and lay on my couch and watch Netflix and not do any of these things that are going to heal me,
Yeah.
even if it means the life afterwards is going to be so incredible, more incredible than they've ever imagined. I tell people I feel better now at 41 than I did at 21.
I
I'm
say that all the
happier now.
time.
I know you say that all the time. So that's one thing I would say is it doesn't matter. Like you say, it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. Don't compare your diagnoses to somebody else. Just do the work and believe that it's going to work for you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is we can't pressure our nervous system to heal because pressure conveys danger, threat to the nervous system. And so if we're always looking at the clock, like you said, and going, well, I'm not healed yet, I still have this symptom, you're pressuring your nervous system. And therefore, it's going to be more in a state of activation and dysregulation, and you're going to be less likely to heal. So affirmations like, I will not pressure my body. My body will heal when it's ready. I will support my body with love and compassion and reassurance. Like you're always saying, calm reassurance, playfulness. I love using that word, playfulness. I talk to my brain that way. I'm like, hey, brain, I see ya. I know what you're doing. We're not going there.
Come on, let's work together. You were there when
Yeah,
we studied all this stuff,
exactly.
did the
Yeah,
assessment. Like, yeah,
yeah.
you can partner with your brain.
Mhm.
Some
Yeah,
people are saying, oh, I do battle every day. And I'm like, well, stop that.
yeah.
Your brain's here to help you. The brain's primary job is safety and survival. And as I always say, it's operating on misinformation and fear. Your
And so
feet,
make it fun. I mean, fun is the opposite of fear.
yeah,
You
you're
can't be afraid when you're having fun.
the
And then
computer
the other
can't.
thing would be
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
they're fine. The other thing would be, but you have healed. So if they're saying, I have people tell me this, I've been doing this for 6 months and I haven't healed. I've been doing this for a year and I haven't seen any improvement. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yes, you have. I want you to look back. You're sitting up on this call. First call, you were not able to sit up. You're able to smile. You were not able to smile. You're able to go out to lunch with your girlfriends. You weren't able to. Like, I've literally had people say, I haven't healed when they're at a restaurant with their girlfriends when before they were bedridden. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's because they have this artificial definition of what healing looks like for them, and their body is healing. It's just not healing on their timeline. And I tell people oftentimes the symptom that you are most desperate to get rid of is the last symptom to finally resolve because you're so focused on that thing, wanting that thing to get better, and you're missing the constellation of beautiful things that are happening in your body. You're sleeping better. You're able to have conversations with your husband without getting into a conflict. You can handle conflict without getting dysregulated. On and on and on. You're doing all these wonderful practices. You're going outside. You're getting fresh air. You're grounding. You're getting sunshine. You're taking care of yourself. That's all healing. It's just not because the one symptom is still there in
Yeah.
their mind. I haven't healed.
Yeah. And there's an interesting book called The Gap and the Gain. I forget the author, but those people that you just described are looking at the difference between where they are and where they think they should be by now. They're focused
Instead of where
only
they
on what's
were.
missing as opposed to the gains that they've made.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that often. I'm like, well, as long as you're looking at, I'm not better yet, you're ignoring the fact that you've made a lot of progress.
Mm-hmm.
So focus on the progress. And I've got multiple videos surrounding that. But for anybody interested in digging into it, there's a book called The Gap and the Gain, which talks about focus on the progress you've made, because that'll lift you up.
Yes.
You're always focusing on the difference between where you are and where you want to be, or think you should be, or deserve to be, because I've done 6 months of work.
Mm-hmm.
You're guaranteeing to feel miserable about it. And you'll be the person going, I haven't healed, just like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, and Luann is very good on that in her program. She explains how gratitude actually has been shown on fMRIs to change the brain, to have a positive effect on the brain, just practicing gratitude. And they found in this study that you don't even have to find something to be grateful for. Okay, first off, who in America can't find something to be grateful for, right? So even if you don't, though, even if you're like, oh, I can't find anything to be grateful for, just the act of looking for something to be grateful for rewires the brain positively. And then she also is in every one of her group calls, she starts them off with celebrating wins. We look back over the past week, the past month. What are wins that we can celebrate? What did you do this week that you didn't do the week before? You know, what practice, even if you haven't seen a symptom resolve, what practice have you started doing? Maybe you started journaling this week. That's a win. Let's celebrate that. Good for you. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I start every single group coaching call with. Let's share some wins, some progress reports. Doesn't have to be a change in symptoms. It can be a
Mm-hmm.
lesson learned, an aha moment, like a holy cow, I'm really okay moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or I did this, I got this result. Wow, this could work for me. Like all of those realizations. We start out the beginning of each call with wins because it is that important. Some people like the wins better than they like the Q&A,
Yep.
right? Because it's inspiring and there's lessons in every one of those wins.
Yeah.
Because not only do people say, yeah, I was able to do this, but I took on this mindset, or this is how I responded when the symptoms jumped up. There's lessons, but it's framed in a win, which is awesome. So it's nice to hear. I'm thrilled that Luann has had such an impact on you, which is wonderful. I'm also thrilled that a lot of her concepts uh, kind of map to a lot of the things I've been doing. Um, and so it's nice to have things in common, like Barry McDonough, who does the DARE approach.
Mm-hmm.
I read his book like 2 years ago, and I was like, holy cow, we're talking about the same things. But he's like this big known anxiety guy. I'm like, all right, well, this is cool. I guess I'm on the right track. So um, I don't know. I love talking to you. What else can you share?
Well,
Anything
I
else?
want
You're
to be
kind of out of
respectful of your time, but there is one thing I do want to mention before I go, because I get this question a lot. Um, because, you know, these days, several years ago, when I was diagnosed with EDS, it was becoming more well known. But before that, it was still considered rare by most doctors. It was very hard to get a diagnosis.
Mhm.
Now, everyone and their sister and their uncle and their cousin is being diagnosed with EDS, h-EDS primarily. And it's because the symptoms are becoming more and more rampant and more. I have people message me all the time. I think I have EDS. I have this and this and this and this. I'm like, well, yeah, those are the symptoms. But what's causing the symptoms? It's not a genetic mutation.
Right.
It's your brain. And people at first, when they hear that, they're like, no, 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 it's genetic. How can your brain cause all these symptoms? That's impossible. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a scientist. But here is a theory that I came across. I didn't come up with this, but I came across this from a woman named Beth O'Hara, who is the author of the website Mast Cell 360. Mast Cell 360. And she did an excellent Facebook Live that I watched right at the beginning of my journey about the connection between nervous system dysregulation, MCAS, and EDS, and how can this very physical, very real, very verifiable disease be caused by your emotions, by something in your head. And how she explained it to me and how I understand it. Again, this, I'm not saying this is gospel truth. This is my opinion. This is what makes sense. It makes sense in my mind. So the nervous system gets dysregulated from whatever, ends up in a state of hypervigilance, severe dysregulation. You have vagus nerve dysfunction. And what controls your immune system? Your nervous system. Your immune system does not operate on its own. It is commanded what to do by the brain, by the nervous system.
Mhm.
And so there's a whole field called psychoneuroimmunology, and there's papers on it, the brain's effect on your immune system, where they will put people into a room with a control group, tell one group they've been exposed to X virus, and these are the symptoms. So watch for these symptoms. Guess what? A large percentage of those people develop those symptoms, even though they weren't exposed to anything. That's the brain telling the immune system, you need to start pumping out all these cytokines, and that creates all these symptoms. So one of the cytokines, one of these little molecules that the mast cells pump out when they're told by the nervous system to do their job, it's called degranulation. They pump out all these substances, one of which is called elastase 2. And elastase 2 acts like meat tenderizer on the connective tissue. There it is.
Wow.
There it is. And that was my expression when I first read the article and listened to that. So you've got nervous system dysregulation, telling the immune system to go haywire. Mast cells pump out these substances, one of which basically dissolves your connective tissue. So you end up with joint hypermobility, gastric issues. You have no motility of your bowel. You have paralyzed bowel. You have gastroparesis. You have all these things. And then, of course, POTS from the stretchy blood vessels and the state of being in hypervigilance, sympathetic fight, sympathetic flight. That itself causes racing heart and blood pressure issues. And all of that resolved when I healed my nervous system, because it's all connected. It's all a cascade. And you just have to keep following it upstream. You can't say, oh, I found the answer, it's EDS. Oh, I found the answer, it's MCAS.
But then what do you do? Do you treat the physical tissue?
Right. What's causing the EDS? What's causing the MCAS? And that was my question. And that's why I wasn't satisfied just being on a low histamine diet for the rest of my life, which, by the way, I'm back now to a normal diet. I can drink red wine. I can eat chocolate. I can eat fermented foods. I go out to restaurants. Like, I have no fear of food whatsoever. I have, and that's a whole nother subject, but I have no fear of food. I eat whatever I want. So if I had stopped, though, and said, oh, mast cell activation syndrome, that's the cause. So therefore, I will take mast cell stabilizers and H1N1, H1, H2 blockers for the rest of my life and eat low histamine for the rest of my life. So until I'm down to 4 foods. That's not the answer either. And so I kept looking, and I found there's something even below or above, if you're talking anatomically, something even higher than the MCAS and the EDS, and it's your brain. It's your nervous system.
Yeah. And when people ask me, Dan, I just can't wrap my head around it. How can my brain cause this?
Mm-hmm.
Your brain controls everything.
Everything.
Everything. You lop off your head, nothing in the body happens.
That's right.
Like, even if you could artificially keep the heart pumping, nothing would happen in the body without the brain. The brain's a control center for everything. Nervous system, vascular, digestive, everything, like everything.
Yeah.
And so if the brain perceives there to be a problem, it's going to activate the healing resources for that problem, which is why if the brain believes you've got a bad knee, your knee's going to swell because it's treating it as if it is injured and it's
Mhm.
activating the swelling, which is part of the healing response for
Yeah.
injuries. And so
Mhm.
it can do anything that it can do for a true medical, legitimate, organic problem based on fear, misinformation, belief, misinterpretation of signals from the body. The brain can misinterpret them and then act as if there's a problem and it's going to go do its thing. That connection between the nervous system and the EDS is fascinating because I guess Beth O'Hara actually connected the actual enzyme that's released through MCAS that deteriorates the connective tissue,
Mhm. Yeah.
which blows apart the entire genetic discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why it's so easy though too, because they haven't ever come forth and said, this is it, this is the gene, that causes h-EDS. They have for the other ones, some of them, not all of them,
Yeah.
but for h-EDS, it never has. They found some mutations. They're like, oh well, it's the MTHFR gene. Well, my MTHFR was fine, and I had horrible EDS.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not the cause. It's a commonality. It's the causal fallacy. Just because a lot of us have MTHFR mutations doesn't mean that that's the cause. Uh, so they're just barking up the wrong tree. And
Wow. You are a wealth of information. You said you were a nurse previously,
yes, in another
and
lifetime.
so you understand the language, the lingo. So your ability to understand what was going on probably also helped you be more terrified by it because
Certainly. Yeah, it was a
you,
double-edged sword, that's for sure. When I was sick, it was my worst enemy. When I was healing, it was amazing because I was like, oh yeah, I know about the vagus nerve. I know about parasympathetic, sympathetic, all that. And so yeah, when I was healing, it was my friend, but when I was sick, it was my worst enemy.
yeah. And I do have people who are like, I know too much. I'm a nurse. And I'm like, I get it. Trust the brain.
And that's where it's so
Well,
it doesn't make
trust the
sense.
body, teach the brain. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my catchphrase is trust the body, it knows what to do, teach the brain that you're okay. Let's keep it simple. Go all the way upstream. If the brain is operating on the correct information and you're not flooding the body with fear, it's going to return to balance, homeostasis, as you said.
Yeah, well, where the disconnect is, there's so many people who will say, oh, well, I have X problem that's caused by my heart. My cardiologist says it's caused by my heart. The problem is my heart. And they'd have no trouble understanding the heart body connection, that your heart can cause this problem. But somehow the brain body connection, it's just another organ. This is an organ that can cause a certain problem. This is an organ that can cause a certain problem. Now, if this is causing a problem, it's caused by the brain. But in their mind, it's like, well, it's my heart, so I can understand that. But they refuse to say, okay, this organ up here, it's like they take this organ and they put it in a separate category that somehow it's not the same as my shoulder or my liver or,
Yeah.
it's just an organ like every other organ. Why can't we accept that it can cause problems in our body? We have to correct it. We have to train it.
Yeah. And that's why we are literally teaching the brain that we're okay. And when the brain feels safe, it operates the machinery very well. When it is terrified, false alarms are going off everywhere.
Yeah.
I am,
Like letting a 2-year-old drive a backhoe. It's
oh,
you
geez.
gotta you gotta put somebody who knows what they're doing in the driver's seat.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I'm trying to think if I've got any other questions. This has been wonderful. A wealth of information, a wealth of inspiration, which is obviously why you're doing this. Unless you've got anything else, I'm out of questions. You've been wonderful. I love the way you are so able to clearly explain where you've been, what you did. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Honestly, very humbled because your recovery is outstanding, and to be a part of that, I'm extremely grateful. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you again for having me. I don't have anything more. Just to encourage anyone watching, don't just watch this video, watch his other videos, and don't just watch them. Don't just be a passive observer. You're never going to get better if you just take the information in. If you don't do anything with it, you're just standing on the sidelines. And so just jump in. It's worth it.
Yeah, that's why I keep saying the word implement. I even had somebody comment on YouTube. They were like, "Yeah, I'm trying to implement." Dan, your favorite word. So, but it's true. You know, if I got a list of videos, a fast start playlist, and it's like, watch, take notes, implement, repeat.
Go do it.
Because if I were to just say, watch my fast start playlist, they'll be, and people will say to me, "Oh, I watched that already." And what are you doing with the information? Are you implementing? Did you take any notes? Are you going through it again? This is repetition. This is,
Mhm.
you're literally teaching your brain that you're okay. It's not going to get it the first pass through.
Mhm.
So repetition is key. Um, I'm going to ask you to stick around for a minute or two after I hit stop. I just want to wrap up a couple of things, but unless you've got anything else to say, I appreciate the audience watching this. Angie, you've been wonderful. Thank you so much. If I can ever do anything for you, reach out to me, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right. Thanks, Angie. So long, everybody.
Bye bye.